Hi, everyone. Hi, everybody. We'll give everybody another minute or so to come trickling in.
Recording in progress.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for attending tonight's webinar. My name is Maddie Faracco. I'm the program manager of Future City High School at DiscoverE. During this webinar, we're going to have Travis Koupal, a Future City educator of 15 years, go into detail of how he incorporates Xplorlabs, a resource from UL Research Institutes, into his Future City experience. This session will be recorded and sent out early next week. And throughout this session, please use the chat function to engage with Travis throughout, and use the Q&A function to ask more specific questions regarding Xplorlabs and Future City programs. Also on the call, we have Susan Hoops, the Director of Programs at DiscoverE, as well as Megan O'Keefe and Jess Sparacino from the UL Research Institutes. So thank you all again for attending. And with that, I'll hand it over to Travis.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from tonight. It is my pleasure to be with you. As Maddie mentioned, my name is Travis Koupal. I teach here in Minneapolis, Minnesota at Justice Page Middle School here for Minneapolis Public Schools. And I'm excited to be here tonight to tell you about the connections that you can make between the Future City program and Xplorlabs. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. So our agenda for our meeting this evening, we're going to start with just a quick introduction of myself and as Maddie just kind of mentioned, the folks who are on the call here. We're going to take a look at what exactly is Xplorlabs. We're going to look at how we can use Xplorlabs together with Future City. We'll have time for some questions at the end and then a brief conclusion before we send you on your way. All right. So again, my name is Travis Koupal. 19 years I've been teaching middle school here in Minneapolis. I've been a Future City educator since 2010, and I've been part of the Xplorlabs program since 2018. So from 2018 to 2020, I was considered an Xplorlabs ambassador, a program I was connected to through Future City. And from 2023 until this year, I've also been an Xplorlabs Educator Fellow. So working again with Xplorlabs, really focusing on this connection between Xplorlabs and Future City. And Maddie already kind of introduced some of the other folks here. So what is Xplorlabs? Xplorlabs, as it says here on the slide, an open access online collection of STEM learning resources for secondary students and their educators to explore the science of safety. So the program is written with middle school students in mind. That does not mean it is limited to middle school students. As part of the fellowship work that I've done with UL, I've worked with a lot of high school educators who have brought Xplorlabs to their classrooms and done great things with their high school students, in addition to the middle school students. So it is not just that program. If you're unfamiliar with UL, Underwriters Laboratory, they are kind of the world leaders in this idea of safety science. They more or less invented the formalized study of this kind of thing. I always tell people, look at any appliance in your house, look for the UL on the power cord. That's them. That's what they do. So they really are the idea that you can get these resources for free from really the company who wrote the book and really is the best in the world at this stuff, really makes this a powerful resource. And again, it's free, which not only is that great for us Future City educators, but just in general, if you teach something besides Future City, it is a resource that you can incorporate at no cost to you. I always like to mention, I don't say these things because I work with UL. I work with UL because of these things. These are programs that I'm involved in because I believe in the work they do, and having tested them out for all the years I've done them, I have found great success with them, and so have my students. So that's kind of why I'm here today, to kind of make these connections to two programs that mean so much to me, Future City and Xplorlabs, and hopefully give you something that you can use with your teams, and if you're a classroom teacher, in your classrooms as well. Okay, so we're going to start today with the Xplorlabs program is broken into what we call pathways. So we're going to start today with the pathway that we call the science of thermal runaway. So we're going to look at two examples of activities from this pathway. It's important to realize that this pathway is far more in depth than just the few things I'm going to show you today. But these are two things that really kind of give you, they're interactive or engaging and interactive activities that really kind of give you an idea of what students can expect as far as getting cooked into these things. And then you can always explore these resources to kind of see what else you can bring to your students. So we're going to start with something, and I should also, the next generation science standards for those of you who are science teachers. All these pathways are aligned with NGSS standards. So these are something that you can, if you are adopting NGSS in your school or district, these are all programs that you can use that will align with these new standards. So we're going to start with the intentional e-scooter overcharge. One of the fellows that I have worked with, Bethany, she showed this video to her students and it really kind of ignited a whole lot of really cool things. So we're going to take a look. I'm going to kind of repeat Bethany's activity here with all of you. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video, this intentional e-scooter overcharge. As you are watching, what I'd like to do, if you would please, in the chat, share one observation that you have about what you see and one question or wondering that you have. I would also like you to think about and post in the chat, based on what you see here, how could this scenario have been prevented? What is something that could have, and in your mind, could have been done to keep what you're about to see from happening in the first place? So with that, we'll go ahead and play this video. And again, please comment in the chat. Okay, so again, in the chat, if you could share one thing you noticed, one thing you're still wondering, and what thoughts you might have of how that scenario could have been prevented. All right, some great wonderings here. Some great comments coming through in the chat. Thanks, everyone. Keep that going. Great question. Why was it being charged inside the home? The high and low stand for the position of the cameras here. This is from UL's. The UL has this fabulous fire research facility. So this is part of that. So different camera angles. There's all kinds of sensors in the room. It's really pretty impressive, the stuff. I had the opportunity to see one of these demos up close. It's really cool what they kind of done here. Right, yeah, 1,000-degree temperature once that thing finally goes. If it was being monitored, definitely. Was there water near the battery? Ooh, that's a great question. Was the fire contained to a single room? So yeah, So this particular video is really kind of the hook. What the activity that you just did, writing down all these great observations, these great questions, these great strategies for prevention, these are all the kinds of things that really get students involved in this process. And there's smoke and fire and all the other cool things that middle school students especially love. But even as adults, we kind of think, wow, that's pretty neat. So that is the hook. That is really something that kind of gets them interested in this. And as you think about some of the questions you asked about the idea of why was it charging inside, why was no one monitoring this, all of this gets to the big idea of the thermal runaway pathway. The thermal runaway pathway is all about the idea of thermal runaway as it exists in lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are currently our best technology for the electrified world. Those of you who are done Future City before, last year's theme, electrification. There are other batteries out there, to be sure. The iron air battery, the salt battery, but right now the lithium ion battery is where we are at, and that is the technology that is most developed, meaning it's kind of got the biggest head start. So it's the one that we really kind of see the more of. But this pathway is really great at looking at something that is so important to Future City. What are the trade-offs? What are the risks and trade-offs that you have associated with this technology that electrifies our world? What are some of the downsides that kind of come with that? How can you manage and mitigate those strategies to come out to that net positive? That idea that while there are these drawbacks, this is how we can prevent these drawbacks from being an issue in a city of the future or a city of today, or a bedroom charging an e-bike. So another resource that we have here in this pathway is the Drop Zone Interactive. This resource focuses on the hoverboards, which if you remember, when they first came out, maybe 10 years ago, there was a huge issue of them catching fire. Well, spoiler alert, UL didn't do initial safety. UL was not approached to do initial safety testing on these devices until they caught fire. So UL did a whole bunch of research on these particular devices to kind of come out to the root cause of why these fires kept happening. And this drop zone is one of the tests that they were kind of conducting around that research. So what you see here with the Drop Zone Interactive is you have this hoverboard and you have 3 buttons, low, medium, and high. What you do is each of these buttons will drop the hoverboard from a different height. So we'll just start with low. So you click on the low button, the hoverboard lifts and falls. And then you have the ability to run a test to see how the hoverboard performs after that drop. So instead of us just clicking through slides and showing this to you, I would like to give you the opportunity here to try this out. So a link has been posted here in the chat by Megan here for you to go ahead and check out the Drop Zone Interactive. So if you go ahead and check that out, after you check out the interactive, please record one observation and one question that you saw. Again, looking at this as a way you could present this to students, but also to get you involved and kind of get some feedback into what you're observing and learning and seeing. So go ahead, try out the Drop Zone Interactive, include some observations and questions that you might have based on what you've seen. Some great observations, some great thoughts here on what you've seen. Regarding the temperature, do the wheel covers trap heat? Phenomenal question. The idea of do repeated drops at the low height over time, would that cause equal damage to a higher drop? Great question. Looking here at the idea of short circuits. So did the drop create the short circuit? Feeling the heat and get off, potential for injury or other burns is not considered. Great noticing. So once again, the idea here is to use this is a super engaging activity for the students. Every class I've ever done this with, they've really enjoyed it. The original version of this had a smoke alarm when the battery finally blew, so you can imagine 30 smoke alarms all going off around the room. I was pretty excited when they took off the smoke alarm feature for that reason, but it's still a really engaging activity and really gets to, and the questions you're asking are really getting to the idea here of, wait, what's actually going on here? Why is this happening? How could this be prevented? So all of these, again, this and the video that we watched prior are great engaging activities to get students thinking about this problem of thermal runaway. And where this pathway does, so once you've kind of got this hook, once you've kind of got them interested in the problem at hand, the phenomena as we call it now, we can use the rest of the pathway to really explore in detail what's really going on here. So that brings us to other resources that are included in this pathway. Without taking the time to go through every one of them, because there are so many, but I just want to kind of point out some of the other things you see here. So we see here resources in this pathway, and we see all of these great things. We see these interactives that show the interior of the alkaline battery, the batteries that we all know of that are in remote controls and things. These various tests, the blunted nail, the crush tests. These are really fun tests. Great videos again from the UL Research Laboratories showing some of the different extreme situations that these batteries go through and how they react. Really showing this idea of thermal runaway. The baloney test is one of the grossest and most fun experiments here. It's so neat to see that particular test. I'm not going to spoil it, but you can see the educator guide, and the video here gives you an idea. Another really great activity. Solve the scenario. So this is really looking at, from a forensic point of view, what happened. So going back, you see here a scooter being charged inside, just like that video that we started with. So cycling it all back around. So again, all of these are great resources. Again, the overcharge test, these testing ones, the students just love. Again, smoke and fire and explosions, but it really leads to the idea of, okay, once the smoke and fire is over, what actually happened here? And then the inner workings of a lithium ion battery, the idea of the separator, anode, cathode, all that vocabulary is covered. So yeah, there's the great zoom in here, giving you an idea. How does a lithium ion battery work in the first place? So really great resources that you can use here. And what's great about this is as you look at additional battery technologies not yet developed, a lot of them, like how does a lithium ion battery work? Batteries work on the same basic principle of transferring electricity. So this becomes, if your students want to pursue, something else, or in addition to the lithium ion battery, it kind of gives them a starting point of, okay, here we know everything about how lithium ion batteries work. How does that relate to the other technologies? And again, you can plus or minus, pro and con, and really do some deeper analysis of how all these things work and what this means for either an electrified city or the devices that run our lives, the laptops most of us are sitting in front of, or the cell phones or iPads or whatever, run on these devices. So the more we know about them and how to be safe with them, the more useful they become and the safer that we all become. And another great question, Jackie. Thank you for that. All right, so that is that's just a brief overview of thermal runaway. It is really, like I said, phenomenal pathway. And as we look at the connections to Future City, so that's kind of what we're all here for. How does this all connect to the Future City program? So let's take a look at some of these connections. Again, the electrified world relies heavily on battery technology. Those of us who did Future City, that was the theme last year, was electrification. As we moved away from fossil fuels, as we look toward cleaner sources of energy, well, if we generate the power, we've got to put it somewhere. It has to be stored for later use. The wind doesn't always blow, the waves don't always crash, the sun doesn't always shine. Lithium ion batteries, again, are not the only option. Again, as we mentioned, a few others. If you've done past teams, they might have found a couple. But right now, they are the most common, and they are poised to become even more prevalent. As we look towards we have different, as political winds change, these benchmarks tend to move. But the big idea is that we can't move away from electrification. The health of the climate kind of depends on moving away from fossil fuels. And regardless of the future city theme, electrification and any energy storage are always part of the project. It is always something that teams focus on, need to focus on, whether it be even if you've got a microgrid set up, or whatever electricity distribution system your future city has incorporated. Electrification is key, and without batteries, electrification doesn't work the way we all want it to. So this module, or this pathway, again addresses the how and why and looks at the risks and trade-offs. And again, any of you with future city experience know that those risks and trade-offs are a huge requirement of these final projects. Both essay, Q&A, models, whatever portion of the project you're looking at, these become risks and trade-offs are always something that we have to account for. And this pathway allows for a lot of that. And it also gives them the skills to make those risks and trade-off assessments of not only lithium ion batteries, but the skills to do risks and trade-off analysis of other things. And again, if you've done future city before, everything is 2 step forward, 1 step back. And that's just how cities work. And this pathway kind of reinforces that. Okay, so that is the science of thermal runaway. I always suggest that with future city, this is a place you start and then you move on to the next one. And I'm not going to hide it that this next one, extraction e-waste, is my absolute favorite. Of all the pathways that this has, this is the one that I enjoy teaching the most. This is the one that I enjoy working with the most. This is the one that's in my work with UL I've spent the most time with. And I hope that you will see this is also the one that is really, the tie into future city on this one is, it's almost like they were designed to be used together. They weren't, but as you look at how they lock in together, the idea that, oh my gosh, if you teach one, you almost automatically teach the other. So we're going to start off here with so in the extraction e-waste, the idea of this pathway is looking at the lithium ion battery chain from the extraction of raw materials through the manufacture, transportation, use, and eventual disposal. So the idea of e-waste. It is an intense pathway with so many incredible resources, but like thermal runaway, and to respect your time, we're going to just look at a few. So we're going to start with the cityscape. Once again, almost custom made for future city. In this, here we have a typical city, and we see these red dots. Each of these red dots represents somewhere in the city where lithium ion batteries are being used. So what we're going to do here with this particular activity is I would just like to encourage you to click around the city of today, as you see here. But I would also like you in the chat to record, where might you find lithium ion batteries in a city of tomorrow? Thinking of the future city theme, 100 years in the future, even incorporating this year's above the current theme. Where could we use lithium ion batteries in a city of the future? Or where could your students incorporate lithium ion batteries into their city of the future? So the link here to this activity is in the chat. Go ahead and explore. And once again, please post your thoughts in the chat of how we could use this technology, these lithium ion batteries, in cities of tomorrow. So again, some great responses here in the chat. So great job, everyone, with that. Showing when I remember the first time I showed this to my students, with working on their future city project, they got really excited about it because they were immediately started to see the connections that they could make in the city of the future. First, they started seeing the connections to their daily lives. They started to see like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, of course, there's a battery in that. Why didn't I think of that? Then they started thinking of, oh, okay, well, how could we expand this? So this is where it's at in 2024 and 21-24. What could we do with this information? So they start getting into the idea. We have the drone here that's making a delivery, perhaps transportation drones. Well, if they're powered by batteries, then how do we deal with the weight issue? Suddenly they started thinking of all these new problems in a completely different way. And it was really great for them to see, or great for me to see them start to make those connections, not only to their city, but to their everyday lives, which was really neat to see. Again, if you live in an urban environment, this is a great way for students to kind of see that. And if you're not in an urban environment, it kind of gives you an idea of where you might find these technologies in a larger city. And of course, you can find these technologies everywhere. I lived in small town South Dakota for many years, and contrary to popular belief, we had cell phones and the internet and everything else there too. So these technologies exist everywhere. Even though it gives the background of a big bustling city, you can find these just about everywhere. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show you here is this On the Mark magazine. This is a publication that was put together by UL. Now it's 48 pages long, so we're not obviously not going to have time to go through all of the pages, but I would encourage you to explore this because you will find, so there's the featured content page here, just to give you an idea of what's in here. So we have what's inside a cell phone, lithium ion batteries illustrated, timelines, environmental impacts, solar power, UL tests. So many phenomenal resources included in this one place. So once again, there's a lot going on here, so I want to give you some time to check this out. But as you kind of flip through the magazine here, think to yourself, record in the chat, whatever works for you. How do you see this being a resource that you could use in your classroom or with your future city team? So go ahead, check out the On the Mark magazine. The link is here in the chat. And yeah, let us know in the chat what you think, what you discovered, other thoughts that you may have. Once again, and the chat continues to light up with great comments, great ideas. The idea of design. I taught this the first time I taught this pathway, I did this as part of a design unit where students had it started off very small. In fact, it started off as just going through. Future City was over. It was the second semester of the year, and we had gone through this just for me to kind of test it out with students and see what they thought. What was going to be a 2-week run through turned into a semester long project where they actually designed a lithium ion battery powered device for a cost of less than $50. And they used this pathway to research all those things. So as you're thinking about your cities of the future, lots of great ideas. So again, we're looking everything. The chat is just full of such really great ideas. I kind of lost track of them, but some great ideas here. There's a whole section. There's a reading on microgrids, fabulous infographics, timelines. So many really cool things here, and you're all seeing some. You're all kind of hitting on some of my favorite parts about this particular resource. Full of lithium-ion battery history, technology, infographics, and really looking at, again, the 5 segments of this pathway are extraction, manufacture, transportation, use, and disposal. And this resource that's on the mark really has resources and readings and activities and infographics all around those 5 components. I did this activity with 7th and 8th graders, the design activity that I referenced, and those are the same age levels I teach for Future City, 7th and 8th grade. And yes, and mining really gets to, and we're going to get to mining here in just a moment. I'm glad that has become a topic here in the chat. So again, additional pathways, resources. This particular pathway is intense as it comes to resources. There are so many things included in this pathway to really dig in detail to those 5 components. So if we take a look here at the pathway, once again, it'd be a whole other hour just to go through some of the stuff that's in here. But as we look at the pathway and some of the resources included, really it sets you up with, we have a whole section, batteries and safe cities. If you look in the top, kind of in the center, there's a whole section just around lithium ion batteries and the idea of a city and an urban environment, which right there alone is a fabulous tie-in to Future City. But if you really explore what this pathway has to offer, when you really start getting into the extraction, production, transportation, use, disposal, every one of these tabs has some pretty incredible resources to really understand what's going on. So if we look here at the extraction tab, for instance, we see here some of the ways that lithium for lithium ion batteries is mined, but also looking at copper, cobalt, nickel, and graphite. So here looking at brine extraction, cobalt, some things about these resources, these minerals that are in these lithium ion batteries. See where it comes from. So you can click on that, and you've got some Google images of mines, looking how landscapes have changed due to mining activity. So you can see here as you drag the slider, how big this mine has grown over time, and background information about that mine and geographical location. So a lot of great social studies tie-ins here as well. Looking at open pit mining, it also examines brine mining. We have copper, lithium. Once again, so many fabulous things to look in detail at these topics. So extraction. Then I also wanted to take a look at disposal. What happens to e-waste on the back end? So this has come up in the chat a few times here, looking at, so once we're done with these lithium ion powered devices, what do we do with them? Technology turns over so quickly. What can be done? What happens to it currently? These pathways are full of these great interactive maps. So these interactive maps, like the one that you see here, the one we're looking at here is global e-waste. This map shows the most e-waste being generated and where it ends up. So if you click on the United States, we can see the green arrows are outgoing e-waste, the red arrows are incoming e-waste. And if you zoom in real close, you see a really big arrow pointing to our southern neighbor, Mexico, giving you an idea of just how much of our e-waste ends up going to Mexico. But you click on these different countries and it really becomes a good look. So as students are looking even at a location for where to put their city, these maps and all of these different sections provide some real in-depth information about different locations around the world as you think of this electrification technology. Yes, data science, absolutely. There's so much of that here. And you can click on some of these countries with smaller dots and you see you have less waste going in and going out. If you click on, so again, and you just click on these, check out these different countries, you can see the United States and China are the biggest economies, or the biggest markets for these devices, but they're not, while they use the most and have the most, their e-waste all goes somewhere else. So this becomes a really good look at really kind of the critical issues, really looking at how this technology doesn't just affect them or their city, but also looking at what impact their city is having on the, or their region is having on the world right now, and how that might change over time, looking again at these cities of the future. So here we see different ways, mineral extraction, how this looks in different parts of the world. So a really nice tie-in here too with kind of a global connection between this and so many other things. And again, this is my favorite pathway. I could talk all night about this particular one, but I really just wanted to give you an overview of what's in here. And this one is pretty extensive, and the future city tie-ins are almost custom built. It's almost as if these programs were designed in tandem, the connections you can make between this pathway and the future city program. Speaking of Future City here, how does this all tie in with Future City, besides what we've kind of looked at so far? I think I'm on the right slide. Sorry, I get really excited about talking about this stuff and I lose track of where I was. Oh, so where this pathway really shines, this is what I wanted to mention. Where this pathway really shines is the ability to do case studies and issue investigations. This brings us back to mining. Here in Minnesota, the northern region of our state, there's a copper nickel mine that is being proposed in the northern reaches of our state, which the northern Minnesota economy for decades has been heavily based on iron mining, but the amount of iron is drying up. So they're looking at exploring copper nickel mines. They found a big source. They could restart an old iron plant to process it, but it sits right next to the Boundary Waters, one of the largest untouched wilderness areas in the United States. So, and it also, there's all kinds of issues. It provides jobs, but how is that worth the impact on the environment? And once you go through this pathway, you and your students will both be in a situation where you can't unsee. You suddenly, things that you would have skipped past in your daily life suddenly become, oh, I remember learning about that. That is, like you drive through a city and say, oh, that's lithium ion powered, or it's not lithium ion powered. How could it be lithium ion powered? Just today, I was listening to a podcast I didn't know about lithium extraction and the issues surrounding it. So this really becomes a great vehicle to get students thinking critically about some of these trade-offs, again, that urban issues have to think about, that all of us have to think about to incorporate this technology more widely, again, as we look at electrification, as we look at cities of the future. So product design, case studies, great opportunities here to take these pathways to the next level, both with your future city teams and if you even beyond future city. So the pathway, as I mentioned, seems tailor-made for future city integration. The Batteries and Safe Cities subsection just by itself, which includes the first activity that we did, is a great starting point. If you have students who are struggling with where do we even find this stuff? What are you even talking about? Give them this map. Look at all this stuff you see every day and see how lithium ion batteries are involved in that. And the On the Mark magazine, incredible resource full of great things you can use tomorrow with your students. And each section, the extraction, manufacture, transportation, use, and disposal, fabulous opportunities for global reach, impact, both now and into the future. So really kind of planning ahead, looking at this 100 years in the future. What can we do better? What do we need to stay the same? What's working? What doesn't? Really looking at where we've been as a way to plan where we're going. Where we are to plan where we're going. Okay, so if you're kind of thinking, wow, this is all, oh, sorry, I forgot a slide. Of course I did. Pathway really shines, again, benefits, risks, trade-offs, real-world issue investigations, case studies, which is what the Future City project is. All of those things are exactly what Future City is about. Risks, benefits, trade-offs, real-world issues, looking at how what we do in one place affects all the places around it and the whole planet. As the planet's more interconnected, everything we do affects everybody. This pathway brings that in a real concrete way, and then you can stretch that out to your Future City project. Opportunities to see technology and development, again, aren't just impacting one person. We saw in the e-waste map, the e-waste that we generate in the United States is global. It goes all over the world. It's not just our problem. It becomes everyone else's problem. And as the world becomes more interconnected, this is something that is only going to grow as both an asset and a concern. And critical thinking, as I mentioned, this project or this pathway is so closely related to those ideas with Future City. Okay, so I saw here we'll be giving us a link to these activities. As it turns out, those of you who are middle school teachers, on the middle school dashboard, a lot of these resources I've covered today are already linked in there. So if we take a look here at the next slide, we can see that if you go to the Future City dashboard for the middle school, so if you go to dashboard and you click on the resources, filter it out for research resources, and find the link that says download the Future City After School with UL Partnership Research Resource. That's the document you're looking here. Now, this is just an image file, but if you download the actual link from the dashboard, this is all linked. So this includes the drop zone. This includes the cityscape. This includes the more information about lithium-ion batteries. So many of the things that we've covered in our webinar today are linked on this document. And if you want to go further, then you can explore the pathways from the Xplorlabs website, which is here in our next slide. We can see, pardon me, sorry about that. So if we take a look here at the next slide, we can see, sorry, this isn't what I thought it was, because of course it's the wrong thing. But this links us there. What I wanted to mention with the next slide was that these aren't the only pathways that are included. Now we can go to the next slide. We also have a bunch of slides from the Fire Institute. Now you'll notice that so many of these pathways in Future City all lead to connections to the other. Thermal runaway leads directly into the extraction e-waste. It also leads over into fire forensics. Fire forensics, as the name implies, for those of you who are doing any sort of claim evidence reasoning, phenomenal, extensive resource to look at forensics, issue investigation, claim evidence reasoning, fire safety, kind of the physics of fire. The science of, and that one leads over here to science of fire safety. And once again, you get to real world connections. When I gave this webinar to the Minnesota educators a few weeks ago, they had just released a report about Grenfell Tower. So looking at fire forensics, fire safety, suddenly we had a real world connection to that tragic event in England. Big overlap between lithium-ion batteries and fire. Absolutely. Each of these pathways leads into the other, which is why if you go to the Xplorlabs website, which is xplorlabs.org, then you have access to the pathways. And once you see all of them laid out, you start to see all of these connections. You start to see how each one kind of feeds into the other. And you can really start looking at how, so here's all four of the pathways linked. And once you start exploring these different pathways, you really start to see these connections, and then you can't unsee them. And as soon as you show them to the students, and the students can't unsee them either. Suddenly their Future City research starts filtering these things in, and they're looking more critically. They're looking more in depth. They're looking for those risks, those trade-offs, those connections to the wider world. All the things that we love about the Future City project, Xplorlabs helps them think about those in another way. Yes, the interconnected safety science, all just phenomenal stuff. And the resource library here includes the resources to everything. So you can really start planning those cross patterns. And if you're not going to teach the pathway start to finish, it gives you the opportunity to pick out the things that work best for your team, your city, or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish with that group of students. Okay, so that is kind of the speed round version. As I've mentioned, I could spend hours talking about each one of these, but I want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. Before we kind of get to the poll question here, if you have any questions that you would like to ask of myself, Maddie and Susan from DiscoverE, Jess and Megan from UL. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, go ahead and type them out. We'd love to answer them. Great question. Yes, Marnie, thank you for asking. So these resources are available to the Future City High School teams as well. As I'm not an educator for the high school program, I'm not sure if that document is linked. The document that I showed you from the middle school dashboard, I'm unsure if that's linked to the high school dashboard, but we do have the person here who might be able to answer that question, or might be able to give a timeline if it's not there, when we might see that on there.
Hi, Marnie. Good to hear from you. I can definitely put that resource up tomorrow. I know it's more on the Electrify Your Future theme from last year. We're actively working on updating it for this year's theme as well. So I'll put it up, and then when it gets updated, I'll change that out.
And I'm excited there's high school educators here as well. As I mentioned, while the Xplorlabs program was originally, the intent was for middle school students, the fellows that I've worked with and the work that I've done with UL, the high school potentials here are just as good as the middle school ones. And I'm hoping that you're able to kind of see some of those connections as well. So as we close here, again, feel free to ask any additional questions. We simply ask that we've just kind of included a brief informal poll here, as far as if you've how likely you might be to include these materials into your teams. Again, 5 being highly likely, 1 being not so likely. And again, as always, please be honest. We are reading your comments. We are taking this all into consideration. And if there's something that you would like to see that's not here, let us know. Again, this is kind of the group of people who can pass these things along to the folks who could make those decisions. So, but if you after you've answered that, if you have no more additional questions, then I would like to thank you for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us this evening to learn about these resources. If you want to show the last slide, this is my contact information. If you have any questions that you'd like to reach out to me personally, please feel free to do so. If you haven't noticed, I'm really passionate about both of these programs, Future City and Xplorlabs. As I think about myself as a teacher, as an educator, those moments that kind of the light bulb moments that kind of change everything. Future City was 100% hands down one of those moments that changed everything for me as a teacher. And then when Xplorlabs came along and I was able to incorporate these incredible resources into something I was already so invested in, that connection, and once again, has really just kind of opened a lot of doors for me, both as a teacher, professionally, thinking about my own practice. So I'm hoping that you can find some use in these things.
Great. Thank you so much, Travis, oh, did you have one more point?
No, I was just going to say one more thank you to everyone for taking the time. Thank you to our UL and Future City folks who are kind of moderating and managing the questions. It's all really appreciated. I'm glad that you came. And again, reach out if you have anything else.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And thank you so much, Travis, for walking us through those pathways. And I'm just going to drop in my email here as well into the chat if you have any Future City questions. And then you see Travis's email here too. And please feel free to reach out to Megan too if you want to drop in your email on the UL side. And just let us know via email or drop us, schedule a call or anything. But thank you again, Travis, and thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Be safe and have a great night.
Hi, Travis. If Robin is still here, she's asking for your recommendation for the best place to start on Xplorlabs.
Oh, absolutely. So I would say if you're thinking about this from the future city point of view, the best place to start for myself would be that batteries and safe cities section on extraction e-waste, or even the On the Mark magazine. The On the Mark magazine is a great resource that you can kind of give to students for as a research base. As you're looking at future city, it really kind of lets them choose, or you can either assign or they can look at it and say, oh, well, this looks interesting. I think our city could use this. That would really be the place. My suggestion, if you're using this in tandem with Future City, starting with the Batteries and Safe Cities subsection of Extraction E-Waste and the On the Mark magazine. Both of the, if you're a middle school teacher, both of those are linked on the resource in the dashboard. And if you're a high school teacher, then it sounds like those are coming soon. Otherwise, you can email the link that Jess put in the chat for UL, or you could send one to myself and I'd be happy to get those over to you.
Great. Thank you all.
My area of specialty training. I'm a middle school science. I have my degree is K-8. Elementary is a nice place to visit. I just don't want to live there. I'm one of the few people who, the glutton for punishment that I am, love teaching middle school. So I teach middle school math. Not math, my goodness. Middle school science and engineering. Fabulous. Love, no, middle school is definitely where I belong. And I get to do cool stuff like this, which makes me happy. Charles, if you are still here, it looks like you had your hand up. If you still had your question, I'd love to answer it, or someone from the group as well. Well, I can tell you, Robin, that project started much smaller. It was really the students. They were so interested in what we were doing. I just had to keep finding new ways to keep it going. It started. I thought we would spend 2 weeks on extraction of e-waste, and we spent a semester 3D printing these little design projects. So it was a great unit. And in fact, if you wanted to email me, I do still have all the slides from that unit. I'd be happy to share that with you if you wanted to give it a shot or pick out pieces of it. Just send me an email. I'd happy to share you the slides for that, and you can kind of do what you want to with it.
Awesome. I think we can call it there. And if anybody has any more
Great.
questions, just feel free to reach out to us. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Again, have a good night. And if you're on the East Coast, be safe.